Welcome to the Folktale Project. This is Dan Scholz. Today we have two stories from the Chinese fairy book. And like our first tales, they concern themselves very heavily with righteousness, goodness, and, well, not taking advantage of a good thing. This first story is Who Was the Sinner? Once upon a time, there were 10 farmers who were crossing a field together. They were surprised by a heavy thunderstorm and took refuge in a half-ruined temple. But the thunder drew ever nearer, and so great was the tumult that the air trembled about them, while the lightning flew around the temple in a continuous circle. The farmers were greatly frightened, and thought that there must be a sinner among them, whom the lightning would surely strike. In order to find out who it might be, they agreed to hang their straw hats up before the door, and he whose hat was blown away was to yield himself up to his fate. No sooner were the hats outside than one of them was blown away, and the rest thrust its unfortunate owner out of doors without pity. But as soon as he had left the temple, the lightning ceased circling around, and it struck with a crash. The one whom the rest had thrust out had been the only righteous one among them, and for his sake the lightning had spared the temple. So the other 9 had to pay for their hard-heartedness with their lives. This story is that tale about not taking advantage of a good thing that has come your way. Very similar to greed for a trifling thing. This is the Magic Cask. Once upon a time there was a man who dug up a big earthenware cask in his field. So he took it home with him and told his wife to clean it out. But when his wife started brushing the inside of the cask suddenly began to fill itself with brushes. No matter how many were taken out, others kept on taking their place. So the man sold the brushes, and the family managed to live quite comfortably. Once, a coin fell into the cask by mistake. At once the brushes disappeared, and the cask began to fill itself with money. So now the family became rich, for they could take as much money out of the cask as ever they wished. Now the man had an old grandfather at home who was weak and shaky. Since there was nothing else he could do, his grandson let him work, shoveling money out of the cask. And when the old grandfather grew weary and could not keep on, he would fall into a rage and shout at him angrily, telling him he was lazy and did not want to work. One day, however, the old man's strength gave out, and he fell into the cask and died. At once, the money disappeared, and the whole cask began to fill itself with dead grandfathers. Then the man had to pull them all out and have them buried, and for this purpose he had to use up again all the money he had received. And when he was through, the cask broke, and he was just as poor as before. That's quite a tale about, well, not taking advantage of a good turn, isn't it? This is Dan Scholz for the Folktale Project. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you like to get your podcasts. You can follow us on Instagram and Threads at Folktale Project. If you'd like to help support the project, you can head over to patreon.com/folktaleproject, or you could always just share the stories with someone you love. I do appreciate that. As always, thank you so much for listening.